I'm rubbing them, kissing them, consoling them, letting them know that we out here fighting, and I want him to continue fighting. Let him go!
As Kyla's family says goodbye to her in North Minneapolis, they're thinking of her intelligence and work as a CNA, her endless talents.
She loved doing makeup. She loved doing hair.
Made sure her kids was okay.
Yeah, made sure her kids was good.
On a bitter January evening in 2023, the quiet hum of a Minnesota dusk was shattered by a single, echoing gunshot. In the sprawling parking lot of an Amazon fulfillment center in Lakeville, Minnesota, a young mother's life hung in the balance. But this was no random act of violence. This was personal. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long, jagged shadows across the snowy asphalt. Kyla O'Neill, 31 years old and 9 months pregnant, sat in the driver's seat of her car. She had just dropped off her ex-fiancé, Dante McCrae, for his shift at the warehouse. The air was crisp, biting at the skin, but inside the car, the tension was colder still. They had argued earlier that day, words laced with betrayal and rage. And now, as she shifted the car into reverse, the silence was deafening. Dante, a 32-year-old Amazon employee with a shadowed past, paced outside the vehicle. Then, in a heartbeat, he acted. He yanked open the back passenger door, his movements sharp and deliberate. A gun appeared in his hand, glinting faintly under the flickering streetlight. A single shot cracked through the night, sharp and final. Kyla slumped forward, her hands still gripping the steering wheel, her foot slipping off the brake. The car lurched, then stilled, a lifeless shell in the growing dark. Minutes later, the parking lot was alive with flashing lights. Police found Kyla unresponsive, a gunshot wound gaping in her neck. Dante stood nearby, hands raised, his voice trembling as he insisted it was an accident. But the scene told a different story, one of precision, of intent. Blood pooled on the driver's seat, stark against the faint glow of the dashboard. The question whispered in the frigid air, was this truly a mistake? Kyla O'Neill was no stranger to hard work or love. A certified nursing assistant and hairstylist, she was studying to become a nurse, building a future for her 3 children, and the fourth, a boy she'd named Messiah, due any day. Her friends called her a light, a woman whose smile could thaw the coldest room. But that light was fading fast as paramedics raced her to Hennepin County Medical Center, fighting to save not just her, but the life she carried within. As doctors battled against time, the weight of that single bullet grew heavier. It wasn't just Kyla's life slipping away. It was Messiah's too. A pink balloon, tied to a lamppost near the crime scene, swayed gently in the wind, a fragile symbol of the vibrant spirit snuffed out too soon. But why? What had led to this unthinkable tragedy in a place she thought was safe? In the quiet suburbs of Minnesota, a single question lingers in the frostbitten air. How does a life so full of promise vanish in an instant? Kyla O'Neill was no shadow passing through the world. At 31, she was a force, vibrant, determined, a woman carving a future out of grit and love. But beneath the hum of her daily routine, a darkness was gathering, one she couldn't outrun. Each morning broke with the same rhythm. The alarm buzzed in the pre-dawn chill, pulling Kyla from sleep. She'd shuffle into the kitchen, the scent of brewing coffee curling through the air as she cracked eggs into a skillet. Her 3 children, ages 10, 7, and 2, stumbled in, sleepy-eyed but chattering, their voices a chaotic symphony she conducted with grace. She'd braid her daughter's hair with quick, practiced hands, the strands slipping through her fingers like silk, while packing lunches with a precision born of habit. The house thrummed with life, laughter bouncing off the walls, a testament to the home she'd built from scratch. By day, Kyla was a whirlwind. A certified nursing assistant and hairstylist, she wore her ambitions like armor. She'd clip hair with a flourish, her scissors flashing under fluorescent lights, or study late into the night, textbooks splayed across the table, her eyes tracing the path to a nursing degree. She was 9 months pregnant with her 4th child, a boy she'd named Messiah. a promise of hope she carried with every step. In a faded photograph, she stands proud in her scrubs, shoulders squared, a faint smile tugging at her lips. That image was her North Star, a beacon for her kid's future. But there were cracks in the facade. Her engagement to Dante McCrae had unraveled, the threads of their bond fraying under strain. She'd walked away, choosing herself and her children over a man whose shadow loomed larger than she'd realized. The decision felt like freedom until it didn't. Beneath the surface of her bustling days, a quiet tension simmered, a storm she couldn't see coming. As dusk settled over Minnesota that cold January evening, Kyla climbed into her car, the weight of the day still clinging to her. She was driving Dante to work, one last tether to a past she tried to leave behind. The engine hummed, the heater blasting against the biting cold. She had no idea that the road ahead would lead not to tomorrow, but to a moment that would stop time itself. What shifted in those final hours to turn a life of dreams into a tragedy etched in blood? In the dim light of their apartment, Kyla O'Neill's world crumbled. The man she loved, Dante McCrae, had betrayed her in the worst possible way. Another woman, another child, words that cut deeper than any knife. Her voice, thick with emotion, declared the end of their engagement. But the end of their story was yet to be written. Hours later, against her better judgment, Kyla drove Dante to a shift at the Amazon fulfillment center. The car was a silent witness to their fractured relationship, the tension palpable in the confined space. The hum of the engine masked the storm within, a storm that was building toward an unthinkable climax. It was a journey that would lead not to reconciliation, but to tragedy. Meanwhile, a 911 operator answered a call that would haunt her dreams. A voice, frantic and fearful, pierced the line, a shooting at the Amazon facility. The words tumbled out in a rush, disjointed, desperate, drowned in panic. The operator's calm questions couldn't steady the chaos on the other end. Help was dispatched, racing against a clock that was already running out. A domestic violence counselor, reflecting later, would trace the threads of a relationship unraveling long before that night. Dante's possessive grip, his simmering anger, his chilling words, "You all ain't bulletproof," had been warning signs screaming in silence. But who listens to whispers when the shouting hasn't yet begun? In the parking lot, under the cold glare of security cameras, the final act unfolded. Dante stepped out, circled to the back door, and in a heartbeat, a gun flashed in his hand. A single shot cracked through the night. Kyla, 9 months pregnant, took the bullet in her neck. Her body slumped, the car rolling forward in a slow, dazed crawl. Dante turned and vanished into the shadows, leaving behind a scene stained with blood and questions. Police descended, their lights slicing through the darkness, casting jagged red and blue shadows across the snow-dusted pavement. Crime scene tape snapped in the wind, a fragile barrier between order and the chaos that had erupted. Inside the ambulance, paramedics waged a frantic war against death, their hands slick with Kyla's blood, their voices sharp with urgency. In the stark, fluorescent glow of Hennepin County Medical Center, the night pulsed with a desperate urgency. Ambulances screeched to a halt outside, their sirens tearing through the frigid Minnesota air, a mournful wail that heralded chaos. Paramedics burst through the emergency doors, a gurney rattling beneath their hands, carrying Kyla O'Neill, 31 years old, 9 months pregnant, and clinging to life. A bullet wound marred her neck, a cruel punctuation to a story that should have been one of joy. Inside, the operating room was a battlefield of controlled desperation, alive with the clatter of instruments and the relentless beeping of machines, a countdown to an inevitable loss. Surgeons and nurses moved with the precision of soldiers under fire, their faces masks of grim resolve. The air was thick with the metallic tang of blood and the sharp sting of antiseptic, a sensory assault that underscored the stakes. Kyla's heart faltered, its rhythm erratic on the monitors, until a single, piercing tone sliced through the chaos. The flatline. She was gone. Yet, even as her life slipped away, the team pivoted, hands racing to perform an emergency C-section. Messiah, her unborn son, emerged into a world already shadowed by grief. A 6-pound miracle born from tragedy, his tiny chest heaving against the odds. In the neonatal intensive care unit, Messiah lay ensnared in a web of tubes and wires, dwarfed by the machines that fought to keep him alive. Severe oxygen deprivation, a brutal legacy of the gunshot, had left him fragile, his survival uncertain. Beside him, Katina O'Neill, Kyla's mother, stood vigil, her hands clasped in silent prayer, tears carving paths down her weary face. "Maybe we'll save one of them," she whispered, her voice a thread of hope fraying in the sterile gloom. A nurse, eyes glistening, recalled Kyla's vibrancy, her plans for a baby shower just weeks before, and murmured she deserved better than this. The hospital, a place of healing, had become a crucible of loss. Across town, the Amazon Fulfillment Center parking lot glowed crimson under police lights, an eerie stage for an unfolding nightmare. Dante McCrae, Kyla's ex-fiancé, stood in the shadows, hands raised, his silhouette a specter against the cold night. Body cam footage captured his trembling voice. "It was an accident. I didn't know the gun was loaded." The words hung hollow, swallowed by the thickening suspicion of the officers circling the scene. Yellow tape fluttered in the wind, cordoning off the car where Kyla had taken her last breath, a silent witness to the violence that had erupted within. Detectives unraveled Dante's story thread by thread. His past, a tangle of prior convictions and controlling tendencies, cast doubt on his claim. Text messages glowed on their screens like accusations. "You'll regret leaving me," he'd written hours earlier, a threat born of rage and rejection. Surveillance footage, grainy but damning, showed him stepping from Kyla's car, his movements deliberate, raising the gun with a chilling steadiness. A firearms expert later testified, voice cold and certain, "That trigger doesn't pull itself. It takes intent." The accident defense crumbled, revealing a man driven not by chance, but by a dark, simmering fury. What had ignited that fatal moment? Investigators pieced together a fractured relationship marked by Dante's jealousy and Kyla's resolve to break free. Their breakup, explosive and final, had left him unmoored, his pride wounded. She was moving on, a detective mused, staring at the evidence. He couldn't let her go. Kyla's decision to drive him to work that night, a gesture of peace or a miscalculation, had been her undoing, a trap sprung from his coiled resentment. As Kyla lay dying, Dante fled. Under dawn's creeping light, he became a ghost on the run, his car speeding along a desolate highway miles from Lakeville. Clothes stuffed in the back seat, phone discarded. He was erasing himself, chasing a freedom he wouldn't find. Where's he running to? Perhaps to a life where his actions couldn't follow, a delusion shattered when a state trooper's lights flashed in his rearview mirror. Pulled over in a routine traffic stop, his hands tightened on the wheel, then fell in surrender. The cuffs clicked shut, ending his flight, but not the questions. He thought he could outrun it, an officer later said, shaking his head. The guilt, the law, all of it. Dante's escape wasn't just physical. It was a desperate bid to flee the weight of what he'd done. But the truth clung to him, inescapable as the evidence piling up in the precinct. His destination remained a mystery, perhaps a friend's house, a border, or simply nowhere. But his capture ensured he'd face the reckoning he'd tried to evade. The news blazed across Lakeville like a wildfire, headlines screaming, "Pregnant woman slain at Amazon facility." Social media erupted, hashtags like hashtag Justice for Kyla trending amid a torrent of grief and fury. Kyla's name became a rallying cry, her story a stark mirror to the violence lurking beneath ordinary lives. In a quiet suburb unaccustomed to such horror, disbelief hung heavy. Neighbors gathered, voices hushed, eyes red-rimmed. "Not Kyla," they murmured. "Not here." A memorial sprang up at the crime scene, flowers wilting in the cold, candles defiant against the wind, notes scrawled with love and rage. Reporters swarmed, cameras capturing Dante's mugshot alongside Kyla's radiant smile, a jarring contrast that fueled public outrage. His probation for a prior gun crime surfaced, sparking cries of how had he slipped through the system's cracks? Kyla's cousin, voice breaking, faced the press. She was our heart. Now we pray for her baby. A GoFundMe page swelled with support, but no donation could mend the family's shattered core. 9 days later, Messiah's incubator fell silent. On January 17, 2023, he took his final breath, a homicide linked to the bullet that killed his mother. Katina clutched his inked footprint, sobbing. He never knew his siblings. Prosecutors charged Dante with 2 counts of second-degree murder, a rare double reckoning. In court, on October 9, 2023, he pleaded guilty, accepting 47 years, 25.5 for Kyla, 21.75 for Messiah. The gavel fell, but Kyla's family found little solace. It's not enough. Her cousin spat, anger mingling with grief. At home, Kyla's 3 children navigated a hollowed world. Her eldest, 10, whispered memories of her mother's warmth, tears soaking a pillow that still held Kyla's scent. Katina, their guardian, bore the weight of loss daily. I see her in them, she said softly, but they need her, not me. The community rallied, activists demanding change, stricter gun laws, better protections, while Lakeville grappled with its scars. As dawn broke over snow-dusted streets, questions lingered. How had Dante, a felon, wielded a gun again? Why hadn't Kyla's fears triggered action? A domestic violence advocate warned. Her story repeats too often. We need systems that hear before they fail. The documentary closed on pink balloons drifting skyward from a vigil, symbols of Kyla and Messiah, fleeting yet enduring. Their light lived in the fight for justice, in the children left behind, but the silence asked, how many more?
Dakota County Police were called to 9800 217th Street West in Lakeville, Minnesota, in response to a harrowing 911 call about a shooting. When officers arrived, what made the scene even more chilling was what they found just outside the vehicle.
They say Kyla O'Neill was killed by the father of their child, who was charged today with murder.
And that baby boy now fighting for his life after being delivered at a hospital. Our Rose Schmidt joins us now. And Rose, you were at a vigil tonight to remember Kyla.
Well, Randy, Kyla's family says it takes a village, and today's vigil proves that she had one. Friends and family taking a moment of silence for Kyla and pray that her baby boy, Messiah, will keep fighting for his life.
Lord, put your arms around them, Lord Heavenly Father.
Holding balloons that matched her colorful personality, the people who loved Kyla O'Neill most, remembering her for the vibrant and outgoing person she was.
Knowing that we care for her, knowing that we love her, and she would truly be missed by all of us out here.
The 31-year-old was nearly full term with her fourth child, scheduled to be induced this week. But instead, doctors were forced to deliver the baby boy after Kyla was shot and killed in this Amazon warehouse parking lot Sunday night. Lakeville police saying at the hands of her child's father.
Don't make sense in existence for her not to be here. For her not to be here for the birth of her baby.
The newborn's grandmother, Katina, now spends her days by his side at Hennepin County Medical Center, hoping he'll show any sign of brain activity.
I'm rubbing them, kissing them, consoling them, letting them know that we out here fighting, and I want him to continue fighting.
Let him go. Love you, Kyla. Love you.
As Kyla's family says goodbye to her in North Minneapolis, they're thinking of her intelligence and work as a CNA, her endless talent.
She loved doing makeup. She loved doing hair.
Make sure her kids was okay.
Yeah, made sure her kids was good.
And most importantly, the love she had